Today, along the Appalachian Trail, we are going to visit a historical area. We are going to see a location where some of the revolutionary troops in the 1770s, or possibly 1780s, were inoculated against smallpox. And of course, this is topical today, as we are very much focused on the vaccinations that will be developed, approved, and administered for COVID. Some of those vaccines are going to be coming out very shortly. This is September 8th, and we would expect that the emergency use authorization for the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines will be within days. So we'll be seeing that soon. But I wanted to go back to one of my favorite places on the Appalachian Trail, which is an inoculation station in Putnam Valley, New York. So here we are at the inoculation station. We are on the Appalachian Trail. We're walking north towards Canopus Hill Road. And we will take a little turn, and in the shadow of Canopus Hill, we will see a historical plaque. And this structure we see is a facility that apparently was used to inoculate troops against smallpox. And we can see where this is. There's the inoculation station. We see it is east and across the Hudson River from the very strategic position of West Point in the American Revolution. As we zoom in, we can see we find Canopus Hill Road, and there is Canopus Hill itself. Now here's the plaque again. This plaque does seem to be somewhat inaccurate. It states that in 1776, Washington ordered that all troops be inoculated. But as of 1776, Congress had forbade the practice. The practice of inoculating was a really very dangerous one, as we'll see. Additionally, Washington ordered in 1777 that troops be inoculated against smallpox, and he informed Congress that he was going to do so. So the vaccination that occurred at this particular station probably occurred 1778, maybe as late as 1781. The term vaccination was not a term used yet because Jenner had not done his work with cowpox yet. And so the procedure is referred to as variolation. And this procedure is very crude. In order to inoculate a person against smallpox, first you would need another person with active smallpox. Then pus from one of the pustules or potentially dyed scab would be rubbed into put into the skin of another person, and they would develop these pustules. But on a good percentage would not develop full lethal smallpox, and so they would get protection from a so-called small case of smallpox. Here we're looking at the foundation of another building. This apparently was a farmhouse that was built at the time. There's a beer bottle that I've removed there. And what would happen here, who knows? You might have troops that were living in here. There could have been all sorts of things along as well. There could have been certainly various animals. The soldiers didn't have meals ready to eat then. If they had good meat, it came from meals ready to walk. like a cow or a pig or something. Of course, there would be women around the camp as well. And there would have been the smells. There would have been campfires, certainly. There would have been the smell of the soldiers. And if they were lucky, might be some smells of some cooking meat, too. While now a ruin, it would have been a very human place. And on a day like this, a soldier would be summoned and get the call to be variolated. So you can imagine the trepidation that a person would experience. Of course, they're terrified of the smallpox that's in the area. Smallpox could kill up to 30% of the people that suffered smallpox. So it was a highly lethal disease. The procedure, of course, is very crude. And certainly people would have known at the time that people can die from this particular procedure. So into this little room, we assume they would go, and you might see other people being inoculated, that is, having pus scraped into their arm. And there might be people that were laying around. They might not be circulated back until their lesions had fully healed. But it would have been an amazing little operation there. And of course, this was absolutely essential because smallpox is was a devastating disease. George Washington, at the age of 19, I believe, suffered smallpox. He was apparently caring for his brother who had smallpox, and George Washington suffered smallpox himself. So he certainly knew of the problems that could result from having smallpox at an individual level. And he certainly would have known also about the impact that smallpox could have on a fighting force. The battle for Quebec saw a potential impact of smallpox. We know that there was an assault on Quebec by the colonials, and during that assault, there was an outbreak of smallpox. We then know that the troops had to reverse their assault on Quebec City. And how that actually occurred, we don't know. Did smallpox come from the troops themselves? There are some suggestions that British troops were variolated themselves and told to go out and spread with the colonials as if they were supporters. And that's a possible way that the smallpox could have gotten into the colonial forces. But we really don't know. What we do know is that smallpox broke out in the colonials assaulting Quebec City. And we know that they were not able to take Quebec City. So Washington certainly would have known about the effect on the fighting force and the effect on the individual. And so he would have been quite interested in protecting his soldiers, even though he's taking the chance with variolation. Variolation could kill low single percentages of those who were variolated. So it was absolutely not a safe procedure whatsoever. This was later improved by Edward Jenner, using cowpox that he would get from milkmaids, and that is where the name vaccination comes from. Jenner used the Latin word vacca for the root word of his term vaccination. And these days, of course, the vaccinations are very different. In the vaccinations against COVID, we are seeing a revolution really like we've not seen. The two vaccines that are at this very moment being reviewed by the FDA are messenger RNA vaccines. They are incorporated into little blobs of fat, you might call them. Not quite accurate, but and those will merge with cells delivering the messenger RNA. And if you remember your biology, the messenger RNA is the template on which proteins will be made. Now, the messenger RNA that gets inserted into the cells of the vaccinated individual encodes for that infamous spike protein. And the human ribosomes are going to synthesize that spike protein and produce it. And this is going to simulate, to a good degree, a natural infection. And thus, we should be developing strong antibodies responses. We should be developing other responses that we don't hear much about, but are very important in defeating an infection. Those are the cellular responses. And we will see, as the time goes on, when we get to view more details about these vaccines, about just how well they work. But it's an absolute revolution. And so we think in days, those vaccines are going to be distributed, and then they're going to be deployed. And the first individuals that are going to get those vaccines are going to be the individuals that were in the trial but did not receive the vaccine. The trials that were performed were randomized controlled trials. Controlled means that there was a group that did not receive the vaccine. They just received saline, salt water, basically. And those individuals, having put themselves at risk, are going to be the first to be rewarded by getting the vaccine when it ultimately is given its emergency use authorization. So those are very, very exciting. The AstraZeneca vaccine is a DNA vaccine. We've tried DNA vaccines before, but I believe this is the first one that looks like it will really be effective. So we'll end on a very positive note and some nice gurgling water for you. And I hope you enjoy the videos. If you want to see more of these, just let me know. I'd be happy to make more. I teach biology as a profession, so happy to go into a lot more detail if you'd like. Thank you.